In this video, we will discuss about why we all need to learn the correct method of parenting regardless of whether we are parents or not, regardless of whether we intend ever to become parents, and also regardless of how old or young we are. In this channel, we have been talking about how we can each reinvent our lives to achieve our maximum potential across all 8 pillars of life. Yes, 8 pillars of life is the first theoretical underpinning that I use to guide my own life's journey towards a more fulfilling life, right? So the 8 pillars are used to set goals and work towards achieving them. Apart from that, we have also covered the 5 dimensions of personal development, and along with that, the 9 layers of self as matter and energy. Well, sometimes I say 8 because the 8th layer can be further subdivided into 2. Okay, so we have looked at various videos elaborating on this subjects, and most recently I was working on every dimension of personal development, starting with mastery of physical health. And apart from mastery of physical health, we also extended our discussion to mastery of the physical world. Yeah? And beyond that, we moved on to the second of the 5 dimensions of personal development, which is psychological health or psychological mastery. Okay, and when we were discussing about this, we moved to parenting. The reason for this is because, as I had explained in an earlier video, all our psychological issues or mental health issues have their antecedents in the way we were parented, in the way we were brought up when we were children by either our parents or primary caretakers or everyone else who was around us, including teachers, elder siblings, relatives, grandparents, and the sort, right? So this is why then, while addressing the subject of nursing ourselves back to an optimal state of psychological health, we explored or we ventured into analyzing parenting. So when I was doing this, I had talked to you about some forms of toxic parenting, where it comes from, and what we need to do to nurse ourselves back to health from some of the toxic or less than ideal parenting or just poor parenting that we had received, so that we don't subconsciously pass it on to our children and hence kickstart a whole cycle of I must say, a whole vicious cycle of propagating the same method of poor or toxic parenting. So this is something that I needed to explain because there were questions asking, why am I suddenly talking about parenting? Yeah. So when we talk about self-reinvention, we cannot not address parenting. Yeah. So we have to. That is one reason why all of us need to know what is the best form of parenting. But that's not the only reason. The second reason why all of us, regardless of whether we're ever going to be parents or not, regardless of whether we are currently parents or not, we need to learn parenting, we need to master parenting, is because when we have psychological issues, if we are to heal, we need to reparent ourselves. Yes, it is actually a thing. to reparent oneself. If you see a therapist or a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist, these people, among other things, will provide you with a therapy called a timeline therapy or childhood therapy, where you will be guided to revisit your childhood and heal the little child that got hurt. But to have a lasting impact beyond therapy, it is important that you learn to continuously reparent yourself, to heal the child inside you, and also to nurse the hurt of that child, to guide that child about properly framing every difficult experience. And difficult experiences are aplenty, and we will continue to get caught up in them throughout our lives. So we have no choice but to build an emotional resilience, a self-reliant emotional resilience, meaning we don't rely upon others, but we rely upon I, me, and myself. I rely upon I, me, and myself to nurse and lick my wound after a difficult encounter with other human beings. It's wonderful if you have supportive human beings around you. I would like to be that human being for as many others as possible, starting with my own family members. But sometimes it is difficult to find someone else. So it is very useful to develop the self-reliant emotional resilience, and this can be developed by actually learning the correct way of parenting. And this is the second reason why all of us, regardless of whether we are parents now or not, and regardless of whether we ever intend to become parents, regardless of how young we are, the third reason why all of us need to learn the correct method of parenting is because when we learn the correct method of parenting, we are actually learning about the correct principles that we need to adhere to in order to achieve maximum results in all the 8 pillars of life. So learning the principles of living life correctly, correct according to the truth that we actually are energy, and energy that is a spark of the larger universal energy, the light inside us, the energy inside us, knowing that we are actually that small spark of energy that is inextricably connected to every other small spark of energy by virtue of our connection with the source energy, the universal energy, knowing this, and hence identifying the principles of this energy field, which we need to adhere to in order to achieve our goals across all 8 pillars of life. This is the precedent that we need to master before we can learn to parent correctly, because it's about knowing something and from that knowledge base practicing our interaction, our behavior with or in the presence of our children in a way that we become a great role model for them. And this is why we need to learn how to parent correctly. Because when we learn how to parent correctly, we are actually learning to become principle-centered human beings, which brings us to a question that I raised in the last video and promised to answer in this video, which is, In the last video, if you're aware, I talked about why it is bad to parent for obedience, right? And I said, while most parents think that the correct way of parenting or the correct objective to achieve through parenting is to get the children to be obedient, I said instead of that, the correct parenting is principle-centered parenting. So these are the principles that I was talking about. So the correct method of parenting is principle-centered parenting. What is principle-centered parenting? We will talk about it more. So when we know these principles, when we adhere to these principles all the time, as much as we can, I know as human beings, sometimes we falter. I falter all the time, but as long as we know, we are aware enough to catch ourselves making these mistakes and making a conscious commitment to mend our ways and be better, we keep getting better. That's what's important. And when we do this, we become better parents. This is why it is important to learn parenting, because what precedes learning parenting is learning the principles of right living. I hope this video was useful. And if you like this video, continue watching, because there will be more coming your way every week. Bye-bye and have a great week. See you real soon.